Hello, and welcome to part 2 of my shawl retrospective. So I'm going to go over the next 10 shawls that I still have to go over, kind of see the progression of how they change over time, or the different things that I've made and stuff. So with that, I'll start with the next shawl in my list. And the interesting thing about this shawl is this was the first yarn randomizer project, and so this started in, I think, late 2017, and I had this idea for randomly picking from my yarn. And I made, at that time I didn't have the little wooden chips, I just made little pieces of paper with the numbers for all my yarn, and I had my husband pull them out of a hat. And so this is the first shawl, first yarn randomizer project, and the shawl that came out of it. And so this is, let's see if we can see this. Yeah, it looks good in the light. So this is a shawl called Green the Whole Year Round. And this is made with, it's called for a sport weight yarn, and the sport weight yarn that had been pulled out of my stash was some Scottish Fleet. And from Alice Starmore, and I'd had like I think 2 balls of this navy blue and 2 balls of a kind of cream color that I'd picked up somewhere a long time ago. This was older stash yarn, and so when I picked these 2, I found this sport weight shawl to make. Now, the interesting thing about this shawl, it's a really nice lace pattern. You see there's no curling issues, which is nice. It's got some, I believe it's got some nips in there, yes, in there, which are little, yeah, you can kind of see them there. And the other interesting thing about this shawl is it's knit. You start at the bottom and you cast on, I think it was over 300 stitches, was an interesting way to start a shawl. And you end up decreasing, and again, it doesn't decrease by that much because it's really more of a wrap. And the really nice thing at the top was it was the first time I had the opportunity to do an I-cord border. Now this Scottish Fleet is not the, well, let's put it this way, it's a relatively rustic yarn. And so it's not the most comfortable thing to wear next to skin, but it doesn't really bother me that much. But it ended up producing a pretty nice little wrap. I don't wear it that often because I think the main thing is the dark blue, but I should probably get this out more often. It turned out pretty nice. But yeah, that was the very first yarn randomizer project, and turned out very, very nice, I think. It was a fun lace to do. Let's see, was I showing the wrong side there? Yes, I was. A nice lace to do, nice detail, and I recommend the pattern. It was really nice pattern to work on. Maybe in some kind of merino instead or something, but really nice, turned out very nice. Very happy with that. Now, the next one in my list, okay. So again, this is another yarn randomizer project. This was project number 6 that came out, and what happened was I had in my stash some handspun that I'd made. I used to have a spinning wheel, and in fact I only recently sold the spinning wheel, and I had handspun this yarn, oh my goodness, probably back in the late 90s perhaps, very early 2000s, and it was knit out of some roving, spun out of some roving and stuff, and I had it sitting around in my stash and just really didn't know what to do with it. Well, it came up in the yarn randomizer, and I believe this one's called, the Handspun Boomerang shawl. So the idea was this shawl would, you could basically use a handspun for it. The gauge wasn't that critical. It's a nice garter stitch shawl, and you could basically use up a skein of yarn. Now, I don't know if I ever blocked this or not. It might be worth blocking. But it is a little rustic, but I think it turned out okay. Yeah, So it was kind of a nice way to use up something that had been sitting around in my stash for a while, and I think it turned out pretty well. So I'd recommend it. If you've got some kind of yarn you're not sure what to do with and stuff, it's a nice pattern for just kind of using something up. And it ends up producing a pretty decent result. Yeah, and so I'd recommend using that one. So again, no curling on the edges. This is purely garter stitch shawl with a nice, gradual increase and stuff, and just a snap to knit, very easy to knit. So really easy pattern, very quick and applicable for any yarn weight and stuff. So very nice one to use. So that was the second one out of this list that I'm going through. Let's see, and then next one is fun. So again, this was yarn randomizer stuff coming up. The Handspun one was actually number 6. This was yarn randomizer pick number 2, and I don't know. You can see I have some hesitation here, and I'm trying to think of the best way to show this. Can you see it? Okay. And there it is. This is a lace weight shawl. And the really fascinating thing with this yarn is it's a lace weight that is merino, but it has a strand of metal in it. Now, I don't know how easy that is to see, but there's a strand of, I believe it's actually steel that runs through the yarn. And this was one of those things where I had this random ball of yarn and just didn't know what to do with it, and lace weight, and found a lace weight shawl pattern to use it for. And again, it turned out really beautiful. Doesn't really have much of the curling problem at the bottom edge. Now, I don't know if that's because of the nature of the yarn or because the pattern was well designed, because I think that kind of meshy lace is good about not curling as much, but it turned out pretty nice. I think one of the funniest things I noticed with this pattern, in this pattern, is the Ethereal shawl. And the funniest thing I saw about the pattern was that photographs of the pattern in the instructions actually, at least I think, again, maybe I'm not seeing things right, but it looked like there were actual mistakes in the shawl in the photographs that were made. And this one I had to be very careful about. There's a lot of very elaborate lace. And that was where I kind of learned this step of when you complete a lace row, when you're working your way back, that you actually recite the pattern for the previous row to yourself as you work back. Okay, this should be a yarn over, this should be a knit 2 together, and go back across. And I have caught more mistakes in a lace pattern that way by verifying as I work back across whether I missed a yarn over or got off track on the pattern or something. It's a really helpful technique to kind of, as you work back, recognize the stitches that you're working back over for what they were supposed to be. And this one, the other interesting thing is if you look at the project page with this shawl, is I had a heck of a time figuring out how to block this one. And so I finally tried a couple of different shapes and finally settled on one that actually worked. And so there's some interesting photographs there. But it's not one that I wear often because it's not about warmth. It really is decorative. Now, if I had a special occasion to go to, I think I would probably wear it. But yeah, Ethereal. Yeah, it turned out really nice. And it was really funny. The first few yarn randomizer picks were all either really dark, like that dark navy or this black and everything. And I swear after the first few yarn randomizer picks, I swore I'd never buy black yarn again. But I've kind of cooled down off of that a little bit. It was just a little tough to have a handful of projects in a row that seemed to have black yarn in them. All right, now this next one is the Pincha shawl, and it does some really fun things. So I used a self-striping yarn because this pattern does some really fun things with a self-striping yarn. And so I had picked up a sock yarn. I think it was one of the heritage prints. And this is a simple one skein shawl. And actually the bulk of this was knitted in Nepal when I was hiking in Nepal, and I had it with me. And so every time we'd stop for the evening from the hikes, I would knit on this project. So trying to get this arranged well. And so it's interesting, and the construction is interesting. Actually, let me take this back off here. You can see how it has these lobes, these little things, and all of this is done with a back and forth short row that you do. And so you just keep doing these short rows until you're finished and finish it off. So it was a really kind of fun knit because it was very you're repeating the same thing over and over, but with a self-striping yarn, you get this really interesting result. It almost makes me think of feathers and stuff. But it's a simple garter stitch shawl. The main thing that gets into it is doing these short rows to get the shaping, get the usage of the yarn to work this way in these little patches here. And you get a really nice result. So I really recommend this. If you've got a really interesting variegated yarn, and this will do some really interesting pooling for you. If you're comfortable with short rows, it's really not a difficult shawl, and you get a really nice little result. And it's a fond memory for me because there's lots of, there's some photographs of me knitting this while I was out there hiking, and I actually hiked with my husband to the Everest Base Camp in Nepal that year when I made this. So there's that one. And again, these are so far all really good results with these shawls. Now our next one is one with not such a good result. So this next one is, let me look at the full name of it. Solideo Gloria lace shawl. And this is a beaded shawl. And I would say the pattern was really great. The beading was I did not find it particularly difficult, and I think the beading ends up being very beautiful. And the thing that I did on this pattern was I used a gradient yarn, one that was changing back and forth between black to, gray to kind of a creamy white and black to black and stuff. And so you can see, I'll hold that up there, you can see the beads in the work. And the blocking picture of this shawl is spectacular. It looks just amazing. And it doesn't seem to have too much of a curling problem. So the main issue with this shawl is that it is made, I think, let me check to see what the composition of this yarn is. 99% cotton, 1% polyester. So this is made out of a cotton yarn. Now, because of that, it's extremely drapey. You can see how it just kind of really extremely drapey. And so it doesn't have as much structure perhaps as I was kind of hoping. And so let's try this on. Let's just kind of drape it over the, so I think, so it ends up kind of not kind of showing off. I think there are probably ways to wear it to show it off, and maybe actually worn more like a traditional shawl, this would look a lot better. So I really recommend the pattern. I think the beading was really fun. Oops, excuse me. And it really looks great. I would say the only disappointment for me from this really is I kind of wish I had used a wool yarn instead of a cotton. Although it does feel nice and everything, so yeah. But yeah, it was a really interesting, as you can see, a very intricate lace knit, and adding in the beads was really interesting. And turned out pretty nice, but I don't tend to wear it. I should probably find some excuses to wear it, because it did. I remember somebody wanted to buy this shawl off of me when they saw me making it and stuff. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. All right, now the next one, I think this one is a free pattern, but I will document that. I will have links to all of these shawl patterns and my implementations, and I will have a note next to the pattern, whether it's free or not, down in the notes of this. So this next one is and I have no idea about how to pronounce this, and Pimpelliese, I'm not sure, but this is a simple end-to-end kind of corner-to-corner garter stitch shawl. So it's mainly garter stitch, and it's got a very simple lace, these little corners there down along the edge. And this ended up just working up so nice. I think the pattern's free, but I will verify that and put that in the notes. But I have worn this shawl a lot, and it is definitely one of my favorites. And I know I was visiting, I think it might be named Apricot Yarn and Supply in San Diego when I was there on a business trip wearing this shawl, and she actually had me show it off so she could take a photograph of it and everything. But it's really a simple pattern, so if you have a little single skein of some kind of variegated yarn to do something with, or even a plain yarn and stuff, this has a nice little lace edge that's super simple, garter stitch all the way, even the lace is garter stitch. And so again, no rolling, and some really neat lace detail, and just a comfy little scarf that turns out really nice. So yeah, so that one I really recommend. Kind of going through these makes me want to knit some of these patterns again, and this is one that was just such a nice one. So I will definitely, you'll see it in the links and stuff. So now let's see. Oh, the next one. So let's see, let me see what year this was. I think it was in 2018. Let's see. Yes. So I have been doing the Jimmy Beans wool. I had talked, I think previously, oh yeah, the craft mint. It was the last shawl I covered in my last retrospective. So now had done that first year, and I saw that one. That one turned out really nice. Well, this year, 2018, it was actually a pattern by Joji Locatelli. Now, let's see if I can, I can't even get the scope of this thing on screen. I just can look at this. It was I believe it's called the Get Together wrap. And so you knit the two ends and then you join it together. Once you've knit those two kind of ends, you join it together, filling in these triangles there. And I think that's the reason for the name. Now, the cool thing about this project was it, again, was another opportunity to use a whole lot of different brands of fingering yarn. I think there's some Nebula in here. There's some Alegria in here from Manos de Uruguay. I'm trying to think. This might be some Hedgehog Fibers in here. So just a whole bunch of really neat yarn, some Lorna's laces and some Madeline Tosh. And just look at that. And so you can see the lace detail there. There's actually a mistake in here somewhere in the lace, so I challenge you to spot it. I left it because I didn't feel like undoing it, and you'd never notice it practically. But so yeah, some nice detail, and you can see the structure here. There's no problems with curling at the edge because of how they're knitting on the bias here, and there's a decent amount of I think garter at the edge to prevent that. And so yeah, so it turned out so nice. And another really fun detail was beads were included. Let's see if I can get a picture of this in here. Oh. Beads were included with the kit, and so you could make little tassels that were attached by beads. And this shawl for me was an eye-opener. I mean, I just love these big rectangular shawls. And so wrap it around all the way. And so this is a shawl I regularly take and wear to knitting events and that kind of stuff. And people always ask to see it, and they always love the pattern. And it was just such a great knit. It was a lot of knitting to get done in 24 days. But yes, turned out so nice. So highly recommend the pattern. Really enjoyed it. And it just turned out so great. And stuff. So this was just a great knit. And again, lots of garter, some nice lace, no curling, great results and stuff. So, see, I think we've got 3 more to go. All right. So the next one, shortly after I did the craft event in 2017, I saw that Jamie Bean's Wool had this mystery knit along that went all year long. So it's the annual shawl. So you get 80 yards of yarn per month, and you get pattern instructions, and you work your way through it. Again, I think I've mentioned this in my podcast. It's no longer a mystery. You get to see what the shawl looks like, and you can pick from a couple of color schemes. But for this year, it was a mystery knit along, and it was my first one of these to do. And again, another moment for falling in love with these big rectangular shawls. So you can see this one has an asymmetrical kind of line of is it decreases or increases? Got this kind of angle running down the middle of it. It's got some great colors. It's all Madeline Tosh Merino Light. And this was towards the end. This was December, going all the way back through the months to January was the light with the bright colors in it. And then February was that beautiful purple. And so again, an incredible variety of colors and speckled, and I think the whole theme of it was speckled yarns. Some great speckled yarns and stuff. So it turned out so nice. And again, this is one I've worn to death. It's getting a little bit worn. I've been so happy with it. And so I've worn this to a lot of events, and when I was working, I would wear these shawls to work like all the time. So let me see if I can zhuzh this up a little bit, but oh my goodness, just great stuff, great colors, just a great wear. And I'm trying to think of what the name of this pattern is. Let me take a look. Oh, Bespeckled by Rachel Roden. And so this just was a great way to use a little, if you're looking for kind of a scrappy project that, you know, for if you've got 80 yards of a set of yarns and stuff, highly recommend this. They're just really neat. There's some cool slip stitches in here, some really, was it, let me see the variation. Yeah, some very, so basically there are some alternating rows with garter, some slip stitch rows, and I see if you can see the detail of the stitch that slipped on the front of the yarn, and then some very simple lace, some more slip stitches here of another variety, and then some simple seed stitch in other sections. And so that's what it alternated through, going all the way through. Really, like, check out that slip stitch pattern there, slipping rows with the previous month's color in the next month. And so it just provides such a nice detail. And it was a really fun knit. And so I really highly recommend this one also. And again, and I am a sucker for a rectangular shawl now. I really love them. And so fold this one up. All right. Now, okay, now this next one, this was this was the yarn randomizer one. And I had some old, very rustic, worsted weight, tweedy yarn in my stash. And I had seen this pattern, I think Sorceress, let me take a look, Sorceress scarf. And I had enough of it to make something that was relatively good sized. Now, the thing I can't remember, obviously there's no problems with curling here. It's knit corner to corner. And so you can have it kind of use up whatever yarn you want, you know, however much you have. And see if I can show it closer. It is a herringbone fabric that's knitted. And it's knitted corner to corner, but this is the texture you get as you work through it. So in combination, I think it's a great combination of the herringbone and the tweed. I think my only issue with it is it's pretty dense. And I went up a needle size, and I probably should have went up further. And I think one of the things I need to do, and I've got these really kind of outrageous, this thing's kind of lumped up. It's been sitting stored away. I've got these big tassels on here on the corners and everything. And so this stitch is a bit of a pain. And it probably works better on bigger needles, but it was a bit of a challenge. In my project, I've actually put notes on how to know whether you're working the right side or the wrong, what direction you're supposed to be going in the knitting. Because of the way you work this stitch, it can get confusing when you pick it up what direction you're supposed to be going. Oh, it's making my nose itch, excuse me. But yeah, otherwise, I still don't know if I've tried to block this or not. That's one of those things I really should do. And you can see it's got a little bit of stiffness to it because of the density of the fabric. Oof. And it's a bit rustic. So man, if you want to stay warm, this would do it. But don't tend to wear it that much, and I really should take a shot at kind of aggressively blocking this to see if I can get it to have a little bit more drape as a shawl and everything. But I did, you know, enjoy. It's not the easiest stitch to do, but the result is really kind of amazing. You see that there? Yeah. So yeah, that was something that was a little different. Again, got to use up some of my old yarn and everything. And I think, yes, so now we're down to number 10 out of this list of shawls. And so I don't know how many of you watched Game of Thrones. I watched the entire series. I won't go into commentary one way or the other about it, but I did watch the whole thing. And at some point, Lorna's Laces had a kit that was at Jimmy Bean's Wool, and it was for this really neat, it's called Shawl of Ice and Fire Mystery Knit Along. Let's see, make sure I'm holding this up correctly. Yes. And so there were different colorways themed with the show. And it's basically a garter stitch shawl that has mosaic knitting patterns in there. I think those are crowns, as you can see if I turn that around the other way, crowns there. And it has a variety of patterns in mainly mosaic knitting using I think it's 5 different colors, 5 or 6 different colors as you go along, finally getting down to kind of a lace kind of ending here with the different colorways. Where they stop using, there's a gray that's used all the way along until the very end. This shawl, it's a big triangular shawl, and you can see pictures in where I've got it completely pinned out. I would say that this thing is around 10 feet long. I actually knit it on size 7s, and you can wrap this thing around at least twice. All right. And it's one that I've worn a lot. Again, there's a lot to like in here as far as the lace and the different, it was a nice experience doing mosaic knitting. I recommend trying it because different than 2-color knitting, you've got 2 colors going together, but you're only working 1 color per row because you're slipping the other one when you're working the one. And the result ends up being really, really nice result and really huge shawl. And I'm really, really, really happy with it. And so this one turned out very nice as well. So So that was my, let's see if we can see those crowns. Yeah, right there. There they are. Got the right side up? Yes, yes, yes I do. But yeah, highly recommend the pattern. It's Ice and Fire by Rachel Roden again. And it was a fun knit. It was a lot of knitting. And it was fun to learn doing the mosaic knitting. I like getting these different colorways to pop through the gray. It was really neat. And then the finish up with the lace. And I think I still have leftovers from this shawl that I have to do something with, and I will. Eventually they'll come up out of my randomizer at some point. But yeah, fun combination of colors. And you can see the names for all the colorways if you look in there. I see. Oh yeah, it was a little string quintet, a little set of 5 colors from Lorna's Laces called Ice and Fire was the colorway. So it was a set of minis that were used as the contrast colors in here. So that's it for the next 10. Yeah, so you can see where I move into, I'm making these much larger shawls, less problems with things like curling and that kind of thing. And the results are great. I'm so happy with them. I would say that when I finished those 2 rectangular shawls from the craft bent and from the year-long shawl, I was sold on rectangular shawls. So you'll see a lot more of those later. And so yeah, so I hope this was helpful. I'll provide full documentation in the notes, and I'll do the next 10 next time around, probably after another podcast. But it was really fun kind of showing them off, and it really makes me want to wear them again, and it makes me want to knit more of some of these. So I hope you enjoyed it, and enjoy your knit.